It's Wednesday, the 7th of August, and welcome to the Edinburgh Fringe. Yes, good afternoon, good morning, good evening. We'll just leave that one more phrase of the music today. Welcome! It's Edinburgh. It's the arts capital of the world, at least for August. And it's another episode in the Edinburgh Fringe show with myself, Ewan Spence, a big guest, and a look at the Fringe. And we'll just fade that down there. Needfire, of course, our favourite bagpipe rock and roll band who've been playing for 20 years at the opening of our shows. Right then, what have we got today? Well, in a moment we'll be speaking to Bebe Cave, but I wanted first to pick out a really important page on the Fringe Review website. One of the biggest drivers at the Fringe are the reviews. Now, these are the main routes for sort of journalists who are covering the Fringe to get copy. They're one of the ways that the shows are sort of sifted through by the media. What's everybody else seeing? What's everybody else getting stars? Who's capturing the keywords that I need to make sure I'm capturing for all the traffic coming in from search engines? You know, that's something that's quite coarse and lumpy, and there's a lot of personal preferences and, as I've mentioned, they're chasing SEO. But also those reviews are used by the public to help decide what they want to see. Remember the rule of three: someone you know, someone that you've been recommended, possibly by review, and number three, just choose something at random. So where can you find these reviews? Well, I mean, one thing you could do is just go out and search for them. Get a search engine, power it up, Fringe Reviews, comedy, Fringe Reviews, stand-up, Fringe Reviews, theatre that's done as a mime, that's using a little bit of influence of Immanuel Kant, and, you know, various things like that. But tip of the hat here goes to Paul Levy over at Fringe Review, because he's published a page of links. You know, the sort of things where you're taking websites and you're logging where everything goes, sort of like a web blog. Anyway, he has linked out to print that are doing reviews, and you'll be able to read them online. Websites specifically, you know, Web First, who are doing reviews online. Micro review sites where it's just a little small snippet, personal blogs that are covering the Fringe. Basically, it is a massive list of where to find reviews online, and you can do some of the sifting yourself with that. So, two ways to find it. First one is to Google Fringe Review and the phrase, "Who is reviewing at the Edinburgh Fringe?" The headline of the article, and that should find you there in any good search engine. Or you can go back to our website, and we will link direct to that page as well in our show notes for today's episode. That's edinburghfringe.thepodcastcorner.com. Right, today's interview, it's with Bebe Cave. She's been a regular at the Fringe since she debuted in 2012 in a two-hander show with her sister. But this year is her first year of having a solo show. It's called The Screen Test, and it's a period piece set in the golden age of Hollywood. But it also talks about the industry demands of today through the lens of yesteryear. I mean, there's almost 100 years between that golden age and what we have here, but they're also so incredibly close. We also talk about the delights of the heroines of the screwball comedy, Katharine Hepburn and the likes, finding the confidence in yourself to go out on stage, face that fear, and of course the importance of family support when you work in the arts. Joining me now on this show, we have Bebe Cave, back at the Fringe, but with a slight difference. We will get to that shortly, but welcome to the show, Bebe.
Hi, thank you for having me on.
The Screen Test. Set the scene for us. Oh, that's a terrible pun. No, we'll run with it anyway. Set the scene.
The Screen Test is a one-woman show, everybody's favourite, about acting, actresses, the showbiz industry, and mostly delusion. It's a dark comedy that I've written in a sort of autobiographical way, but I've been able to take some of the bad experiences I've had in the showbiz industry and some of the sort of the major character flaws that I probably have within myself as a person. And I've translated that and tried to imbue that into my leading character, who is called Betsy Bitterly. And instead of being an actress nowadays, she is an aspiring actress in the 1930s, in the golden age of Hollywood, mainly because I wanted to be able to wear a nice outfit. Vintage outfit. I love those. I love the cut of those dresses and use some fun, jaunty music. So really, that's what the best thing about art is. You can take your broken heart and you can make it into a fun little vintage show.
There's two contrasts of the same subject there. Talking about the insecurities and character flaws, but also talking of, let's do the same thing, the insecurities and the flaws in the industry.
Yes.
It's like two different sides of a coin, but with two different responsibilities.
That's interesting. Wow, I like the way that you've put that.
How do they mix in the show?
Well, I think that in order to be somebody that tries to pursue a career in this industry, which is known to be difficult and full of rejection and full of like lots of injustice and unfair situations and like a lot of heartache, that you have to be a sort of special type of tenacious person to go forward with that, and probably a little bit broken and messed up yourself. And so that's why I think, yeah, the parallel of it being a slightly warped industry and then also the people in it being slightly warped, it goes sort of hand in hand, that, you know, a broken system would attract slightly broken people. But I don't think that that has to be just a negative thing. I think there's so much humor that can come from that, from the pursuit of something, despite it maybe not being the best thing for you, but also something beautiful and human about it, because to be able to want to just pretend and play around and create something is a very joyful pursuit of life. So that's why I think that there's lots of funniness and depth to be found in that. Sorry, I didn't explain myself very well.
How difficult was it to decide where the autobiographical part was going to stop and the fictional part come in?
I think once I started writing it, it was quite clear that the autobiographical part should be actually a relatively small part of the show. I want it to feel like this has come from real feelings and experiences that I've had. And obviously this character is sort of like a exaggerated version of me, and version maybe of all actresses in a way. Like there are some very fun character traits that if you come and see the show, I think you'll be able to associate with any sort of neurotic actress. But I knew that in order for it to be really funny, that sometimes hearing somebody's bleak actual real life experiences may be on the way to hit your funny bone. And because I also knew that I wanted the story itself to not just be fun, I wanted it to be quite dark, and I wanted it to have a strong through line, a sort of challenging message to a certain extent. I've always thought that comedy is really one of the best ways to be able to make an audience sit up and engage and listen. If something's really funny, it pierces through, and then other messages that you have, other themes that you have, can layer on quite well, because you've already sort of been woken up to, you know, what this character is saying. So in order for it to be dark in the way I wanted it to be, I knew it had to be really funny, and therefore real life experiences that I had would have to be changed and exaggerated. And basically it just became an exercise of, this is more of a spiritual autobiography, but actually none of this actually happened to me, obviously.
I mean, if we go back to the sort of the golden age, and you've said there the 30s, which is great because there's that saves me the question of, it's quite a wide window which part here. We're talking a period where the studios, like 5 major studios, had ultimate control over every actor underneath them. You also had the Hays Code coming in, which meant there were very strict things that you could only, there was a strict list of the things that you could do, which meant any sort of experimentation, differentiation, uniqueness was just absolutely sandblasted out.
That's so true. It's so true.
People.
In a way, I guess it's kind of an interesting reflection when you put it like that, about originality being sandblasted out, because you sort of have something similar, I suppose, with the industry today, which is that I feel like sometimes originality gets sandblasted out of actors. You have to look a certain way, you have to fit a certain like qualifications, I do think, especially with female characters, yeah, originality can get sandblasted out. But it was a very different industry then. And I think that something I always found interesting was this star system that emerged. This idea that you could become a star overnight if you were discovered by a studio and then put up for these screen tests, sign a 7-year contract. You didn't really have a relationship with an agent like you do now. It was very much being owned by the studio system. And the idea that you could read about a casting call and potentially get found by one of these studios and become a star overnight and have your whole life transform, I think is like a really like modern idea in a certain way. Like we have a lot of people that become stars overnight nowadays on TikTok or social media. And in a way, it's interesting to think that like the 1920s and 30s is sort of the start of that. Imagine, their version of TikTok is getting discovered by MGM or something like that.
You get TikTok, but it has to be posted to you every week.
Yeah, yeah. And the Hays Code also is so interesting because obviously you had to take anything explicit out of movies, anything that could basically be deemed as immoral. But then the Hays Code is sort of what gave birth to my favorite genre of these films, screwball comedies, where it became so much more about the witty repartee and the fast-paced dialogue to give this sense of flirtation and tension between characters. It couldn't be body language. It couldn't be physical affection. In fact, a lot of the time, the characters had already been married. And for the purpose of the film, they're sort of separated, but then they get back together by the end. So they're remarried. But ultimately, this was never a tale of two people even being slightly sexually flirtatious with each other who hadn't already taken legal vows to be together. Like so many comedies of remarriage during the 1930s, which I love. But I also think that screwball heroines are such a unique class of female character where they can be so whimsical and away with the fairies, but then so intelligent and fast-paced at a certain other point. I think it's a very modern type of female character, and I just knew that that was what I wanted to be able to try and emulate. What would a person be like if they were one of the thousands of girls that auditioned to be Katharine Hepburn, but didn't quite get there, but still had the voice and the outfits? I just thought that would be quite fun.
This is the point I'm going to bring your sister in now, yes?
Yeah, great. Go for
it. The idea that there's this yourself, Jessica, who's also up at the Fringe this year, so we'll have a link back to her show as well. Working together over many years, not just at the Fringe, online, writing, podcasting, creating, but now you're doing a solo show after what, the 12 years ago, coming up to the Fringe for the first time?
Yes. Wow, very good. I'm glad you know that. It's a really good question. I think that I had a lot of fear about performing solo. In fact, a lot of the feelings and themes that I talk about in the show really come from this this immense fear I had within myself that I wouldn't be able to perform on my own, that maybe when it came to comedy and writing, that I was only really suited to working with my sister, bouncing off of her very unique, quirky energy. And I respect and love my sister so much. I think that she's one of the most talented writers and performers and is such an inspiration to me in so many ways. But yeah, I think it got to a point where I was maybe at the Fringe last year. My boyfriend, Horatio Gould, who is also doing a show this year that I can maybe name drop later, he was debuting last year. And I was up at the Fringe spending some time with him and watching so many shows and feeling so inspired, but also feeling very conflicted within myself because I so desperately wanted to be able to be a part of something like the Edinburgh Fringe. There's nothing really like it in the world, or at least that I have experienced, where you just have so much freedom as a creative person. You can really put your own voice out there to the world, which as an actor, you just really don't have the opportunity to do. You have to wait for somebody else to give you lines to say. You sort of feel like you're on a sort of conveyor belt and that maybe you'll get plucked up eventually. And a lot of the time you don't, and it can leave you feeling very powerless. And then I was at the Fringe seeing not only my boyfriend and my sister and so many of my friends really putting their own creative voice out there. I knew that I needed to get past this fear that I had in my mind. I knew that even if it went absolutely terribly, that if I could just prove to myself that doing something that scary doesn't end with you bursting into a million flames and shattering into a million pieces and your life going to a mess. I knew that if I could just push myself past that point, that I would hopefully grow and develop as a person. I think, acting is in one way, it's about bravery, being a creative person about bravery, but there was so much fear also holding me back. The idea that somebody else had to cast me, had to write something for me, had to tell me that I was good enough. This experience has been a chance for me to prove that that's not necessarily true, that you can be a performer and you can be an actor, and it doesn't matter if somebody else doesn't give you that opportunity to do it. You can make it yourself. And that's what all of the people around me have been doing for such a long time. It's what I've been doing with my sister for a long time. But this was a bit of a wake-up call where I realized, you know what, I need to prove this to myself that I can do it. And luckily enough, with the topic that I've chosen, the fact that it's about an actress, I was able to really channel all of those feelings into this person. But she's almost like a horror story fable of the bad side of putting yourself out. So maybe that says something about the way that I'm projecting. But like I said, I think that this process has been about proving to myself that fear is definitely, it can hold you back in so many ways. But when you really have to do something and you actually do it, it's an incredibly healing process with your own self and your own insecurities, because you've proven to yourself that you didn't burst into flames. Sorry, that was a very long-winded way of answering that question.
I think it's a lovely answer, because creativity is about finding the perils, the oysters, the grit, and just focusing in on them.
Yes.
So let me focus in on one bit of that process, if you wouldn't mind. Which came first? The fear and thinking you had to break it, or the story of the screen test and then realizing you had to do that?
They almost existed at the same moment, but I think that the fear was there first and the feeling that I needed to break it. In fact, I had a very different idea for what the show would be initially. It was going to be about a milkmaid. Have you seen the painting by Vermeer, The Milkmaid? She's pouring this lovely little ceramic jar of milk. And I thought, there's a show in that. I thought it could all be about a milkmaid. And it was going to be about this fable with the milkmaid, and then she's daydreaming her life away, and then she accidentally ends up spilling the milk at the end of the fable. And it was all about dreams and delusion to a certain extent. This idea that I've had about this type of a character, I think, has been percolating in my brain for many years. Because even when I started this writing process, I was able to look back on documents that I've been writing for a long time and find, that actually, in a way, I've been writing parts of this show for years. I just didn't realize. So this idea about dreams and delusion and false expectations has always been there. But the actress storyline and the screwball comedy theme and the aesthetic for the show, that came a little bit later, maybe a week or two after this big moment, wake up call. Okay, I need to push past this fear and write something. But once that idea did emerge, I think I'd rewatched Bringing Up Baby, and I was like, got to do that. Once that idea really kicked in, it all started to come quite quickly and fall into place, which was a huge relief, obviously.
I mean, Bringing Up Baby, we're back to Katharine Hepburn again. We're into Cary Grant. Have we already mentioned Cary Grant? But if not, Archie Leach is fine there. Is your sister your Howard Hawks then? Howard Hawks, of course, being the director of Bringing Up Baby for all the Jen whatever letter we're on.
I don't necessarily think my sister's my Howard Hawks, because my sister's not my director. Maybe you mean more in the sense that, like, she's fostered me into the world and
back to the studio system flavor again.
Back to the studio system, exactly. My sister signed me on a 7-year contract, and if you don't get cast, you're gonna get kicked off the roster for the year. I'm just gonna end up being like the MGM lion and roaring. That'll be my only job. I'll be like the logo or something. It's a wonderful thing having somebody in your family that is ruthlessly creative and original. I've never met anybody like my sister, truly. Like, she's an idea factory. She's able to express herself so well in the creative mediums that she chooses. Shadow puppetry, illustration, writing, fights even. Expresses herself incredibly well there. So yeah, it's always been an incredibly privileged, lucky thing to have somebody in my family that exerts their own creativity that well. And she's 10 years older than me, so I always felt like it wasn't just really a sister relationship. She brought me up in so many ways. But I think also what's interesting is that we actually started acting around the same time. I was a child actor, so I was around 9 or 10. My brother Ben he's 5 years older than me, and he was an actor as well. And then Jessie had sort of dropped out of university or art school. She was 19 or 20, and then decided that actually acting was something that we all sort of auditioned for this children's agency together, the three of us, and started our acting careers kind of concurrently. And then she obviously got cast in Harry Potter, and that was amazing. And has had the most interesting, varied career with her own ups and downs and her own challenges that she would be able to speak a lot better about, really. But I think that we always knew that we wanted to perform. And it was so nice to be able to have somebody that you could connect about that with. And then by the time we did our first Fringe show, yes, that was absolutely her being my Howard Hawks, dragging me along. I mean, my goodness, I had no idea what I was getting into. But to be fair, she didn't really either. She'd been to the Fringe the year before, the summer before, as a punter for a couple of days. And I think she maybe fancied some comedian guy and like was trying to impress him by going to see loads of shows or something like that. And then the next year she said, we're doing the show together, and we rehearsed it and wrote it. But oh my goodness, I mean, I was 14 or 15. I really had no idea what I was getting in for, but I was hooked from the second that I was up there. I absolutely loved performing there. And thank God for my sister. Thank God for my own Howard Hawks dragging me into that world, because it's been a huge part of my life ever since.
So the show itself, we've got to mention two shows now. We've got to mention your show, and presumably your brother's got one up here as well that's not getting any PR.
No.
We have to mention your sister's shows now. Let's start with your sister. Where's Jessie performing?
Jessie is performing at the Assembly. Her show is called An Ecstatic Display.
And yourself?
I'm performing at the Pleasance Below at 3:10, and it's called The Screen Test.
And as always, we will have links to those and direct into the box office back at our website, edinburghfringe.thepodcastcorner.com. I know you're online, so where can people find out more about yourself?
You can find me on my Instagram at Bebe Cave.
And was there any thought to bringing back that 2012 show and just doing a one-off?
What, Bookworm?
Yeah.
Well, Bookworm was about a fictional book club that my sister, a fictional, sort of not fictional version of her, was running. And it was mostly about trying to get back at a boy that had broken her heart, and sort of take it out on the imaginary book club members who were the audience. And I was her sort of wearied assistant. And we had a big cardboard cutout of a gingerbread house on stage, referencing Hansel and Gretel. Obviously, everything was incredibly, there was a lot of research put into the show. We had a big giant cutout of the beaver from Narnia, or Jessie was wearing a t-shirt with Aslan on it. So you see, it was very literary, very thoroughly researched, because we're both bookworms, obviously. And we thought it would be fun if I hid inside of the cardboard gingerbread house for the first 10 minutes of the show, so that when I did eventually crawl out, my sister said, and here's my assistant, and I crawl out of the cardboard house. But the show's already 10 minutes in. It really gave the audience a lovely shock value. I'm a lot bigger as a person now. I'm not 14 anymore. So I don't know if I'd be able to fit quite as snugly inside of a cardboard house. And my knees, I think, wouldn't be able to cope with that pressure, because unfortunately, I haven't kept up that level of fitness. So I just don't think it would work doing a revival of the show. And I've obviously spoiled the big reveal anyway.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure there's going to be some footage back with your parents anyway. Bebe, delight to have you on the show. Best of luck going solo at the Fringe, and
thank you very much.
Enjoy your time in August on the marathon that your body will remember what it's like, but will forget again on September the 1st.
That's good to hear. Like childbirth. How lovely.
Bebe Cave there, talking about the screen test and a whole lot more as well. The screen test itself, Pleasance Courtyard, starts at 3:10 in the afternoon and runs right through to August 25th. As mentioned, ticket links will be at our website as well. And we'll also have links to Bebe's website and socials and all of that as well. What do we have tomorrow? I think Grandma's Shop. It's a look at Sheffield in the past. It's a look about looking back at your family's history, and also there's an eccentric cat lady involved as well. I think that's going to be a win in the eyes of the internet. As always, link, like, love, share, subscribe wherever you are on the internet to the show. It really helps people find it. If you have the chance to leave us a review, whether it's just giving us the stars in your podcast client or writing a sentence or two about the podcast, again, that really helps people find us, and be very much appreciated. But you know, the most appreciation is you've spent some time, you've listened to this. Thank you very, very much. I will catch you at some point during the Fringe or beyond. But for now, ta-ra. You've been listening to the Edinburgh Fringe Show, hosted by Ewan Spence, produced by Spence Media and Radio 6 International. Listen to more at edinburghfringe.thepodcastcorner.com.